So I thought I would just make a list of from chapter 5 of the Cult of Trump. Because of time, I don't want to go through all of them in detail, but framing is a very powerful social influence orientation. Robert Cialdini, so famous social psychologist, has talked about in his book Persuasion, the necessity to basically decide the territory of whatever the interaction is going to be about. And unfortunately, the cult of Trump people have been far more sophisticated, in my opinion, than everyone who has been trying to promote democracy and freedom. Of course, storytelling is one of the oldest forms of influence. It's a way to share experiences. And of course, if you tell a story about needing to make America great again, and you create a fantasy around that, that's the frame that many people in the cult of Trump have been indoctrinated into, versus looking historically, looking at the facts, and having a more nuanced and robust and complex understanding of our history and our country. Projection is a very important and powerful technique of influence, where you're diverting people's attention to the other side in order to take the attention off of you. So if you think back, Trump would often blame Hillary Clinton, for example, for trying to do a coup, when I think the evidence will come out that, in fact, there is evidence about the 2016 election, for example. But projection is being used constantly, and I'll get into explaining how to parse and how to understand a whole continuum of influence. Repetition over and over and over again, especially by an authority figure, someone who occupies the office of the presidency, can keep changing people's stories at will with a tweet, and that's what he was doing for 4 years straight. Social proof is getting other politicians to support his big lies, his pathological lying, getting media people to repeat it, celebrities. I want to talk about hypnosis and something called neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. It's something that I've studied in depth in 1980, actually, in 1981, right after my exit from the moon cult in 1976. I was just immersed in wanting to understand brainwashing and mind control and undue influence. And this is a system that was developed by Grinder and Bandler based on a psychiatrist, Milton Erickson's work with naturalistic or process-oriented hypnosis. And much of what Erickson taught and NLP teaches, and I should say Tony Robbins is probably the biggest promulgator of the techniques of this influence, of mirroring people, mirroring their words, mirroring their postures, their breathing, pacing wherever they're at, and then leading them. It's a very important concept to learn more about. Visualizations, like imagine the immigrants, they're coming, they're invading us, and this type of mental manipulation to generate fear is hugely important in the cult of Trump. Fear, hatred. Anchoring is another term. Think of anchoring as a cue. A lot of people know of Pavlov's dogs, where there was a ringing of a bell and the dog would salivate. Words can become anchors, and gestures can become anchors. And it's a way that we learn, but it's also a way to program people if you're an authoritarian. Confusion is the single most important technique if you want to mind control someone or exert undue influence, is to disorient them so that they're off balance and they want to make sense of what's happening, but things are very confusing. And so, for example, we're kind of wired to follow authority figures that we believe are legitimate. And we're kind of wired to expect that, media is going to be telling us the truth. Although I think now, after 4 years of the cult of Trump, we are much more suspicious about what information is being sent our way and what's the source and has it been validated. But confusion, if somebody like Trump says a statement like, well, Obama wasn't born in America, big lie, but he says it, and he says it over and over and over again, repetition, etc. The normal reaction is confusion, because he shouldn't say that, but he is saying that. So it activates a part of people's minds to try to resolve the confusion. And unfortunately, whatever information is coming at us dominates. Pattern interruptions. So how to explain a pattern interruption? I want to use the Access Hollywood statement that he made, that Trump was caught on tape, where he talks about grabbing women by their genitals. And as soon as he said it, I realized this is a technique to pattern interrupt someone. In other words, to invade their space. It's so out of the ordinary script. It's so out of the ordinary code of conduct that unless you've been violated or raped, where you slap the person and you scream, you're in shock that somebody just touched you in your privates. And in that moment of confusion and pattern interruption, Trump would say, "But you're so beautiful. You made me do this." And it's a way of harming and assaulting women that I believe we're going to be hearing a lot more about. Double binds is where you're given a sense of a choice, but in fact, whatever you do, the person who's the puppet master is in control of the choices. So you have the illusion of choice, but there is no choice. So, for example, in the moon cult, you can leave, the door is right there, but you'll regret it forever, and Satan will invade and destroy the earth. But it's your choice. That's an example of a double bind. Next, I'd like